Welcome to Confessions of an Entrepreneur, powered by RG. My name is Carl Swansbury, and I'm thrilled today to welcome Gary Goldsmith onto my podcast. Gary Goldsmith is a true entrepreneur, having founded and scaled part of the S3 empire, up to the point whereby the business was IPO'd and Gary took £30 million off the table. Gary has gone on to be a highly successful, very well-profiled advisor, working with founders and in turn CEOs of recruitment businesses globally, helping them scale, internationalize, and build value, in turn helping those individuals realize significant capital value for themselves. Gary is uncle to Kate Middleton, and as a consequence is someone who's always in the public eye. And of course, more recently, as Gary has pursued a career perhaps outside of recruitment, he has started to not only perhaps spend more time as a public speaker, but has become someone who we may all have seen on our TVs as a consequence of appearing on Celebrity Big Brother 2024. I think today's podcast is going to be colourful. I think there's going to be some real insight shared. And for sure, I'm really looking forward to understanding a little bit more about what has driven Gary to this point, not only professionally, but personally. So I think today's podcast is definitely going to be one not to miss. Gary, it is genuinely brilliant to have you on my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast today. So massive thanks for traveling all of the way from the capital to be here in the Northeast.
So, it's a bit of a home from home for me. Mum was a Mackem.
Yes, from the right side of the time, as a fellow Mackem, I can only applaud that, Gary.
My daughter came to university here. I was a football agent and, moved probably out of Newcastle, but I was up here for his testimonial. So I spent a lot of time in the Tyne.
Awesome.
And so it's lovely to be here. And do you know what? Nobody expected it to be this warm.
It's phenomenal.
I'm totally overdressed.
Thank you for bringing the sunshine from the capital. As you say, normally it's not this humid in the Northeast, so great to have you with us. And of course, many people may know you, but for those who don't, I'd like to just go back right to the beginning. So obviously you mentioned you've got some ties to the Northeast, but of course you weren't born and bred in the Northeast, right?
No, I'm a southerner, grew up in Southall. My sister went to school bang in the middle of the middle of Southall. So all my friends, it's a very eclectic bunch. I went to school underneath the flight path at Heathrow, and most of my family, in some way, shape or form, have got links to Heathrow. So viva the extra runway, because it's really important to the country. But let's not get into politics that quick.
Yes, albeit you mentioned politics there, so it would be great to know just a little bit about actually the blood that is running through your veins, because you are, of course, a royalist, right?
Mum and Dad were massive royalists, so we used to go to, we lived 10 minutes from Windsor, so we used to get there really early just to see the polo being played. Randomly, Simon Arbour, who was one of the founders of S3, is a massive polo enthusiast. Is
that how you met?
No. Oh dear God, no. No. That came a long time after I made him all of his money.
Okay.
But we went.
We will talk about that.
They were good at perm, but there was no money in perm. And then, so Simon and I are really great friends, but it was all about Mum and Dad wanting us to see the royal family as a massive asset to the country and all that it does, and how random life fulfills itself, although Mum never got to meet William or gets to the wedding, which was really sad, but
That is sad, and we'll come back to the royal family in a moment, because of course, as uncle to Kate Middleton, I'm fascinated to understand a little bit more about exactly, how it is being part of the royal family, and of course, how you have to manage the way people perceive you as a consequence. Well, it might be a stretch, but I definitely want to.
It's something I definitely leverage every time I go to America. But apart from that, I'm my family is my family, and it just so happens that we're associated with probably the best brand on the planet. But,
Yeah, I agree.
Leave that there.
I agree, and we'll come back to that because it's an interesting subject to discuss, Gary. So obviously born and bred and educated in London. And just tell me a little bit about how you went from education to joining S3, which of course today is a large listed global technology staffing business. So just talk to me about how you went from education to S3.
Okay, so wow. I wasn't naturally gifted at education. I think I'm the smartest person in most rooms, but I'm definitely not the most educated.
You mean academically?
Academically. So when you share an office with Russell Clements, who's got a first class degree in politics from Essex, so a Russell Group University, and you got me in the room who wanted to be a professional tennis player. But we were there as peers, as partners, and I know some years it was perm, some years it was contracts, and we decided to pool our shares. He did very well out of that job, by the way. But we were, properly. Were people? We were born in the same hospital, only 2 months apart. How random is that?
Call that fate.
Isn't that? No.
It is.
And if you think about this year, this is a special year. It's our 60th year. So Sunil, myself, and Russell will have our 60th this year.
And will you celebrate together? Are you still friends?
Oh, we're all massive friends. Of course we are. Awesome. Yeah. And we all do Christmases together. And I still go to Bill Bottrell's for Christmas Day.
Yeah. And for those who don't know some of these people, these are all veterans within the recruitment sector, right? Having all built highly successful businesses.
So if you think about the 6 people that were behind the S3 brand and empire that's now doing $2 billion a year, Simon, Bill, Russell, myself, Sunil, and Gary Eldon, it was a very strong mix of people, all very different. We just kind of loved the way that it just came together. So you had Sri Lankans and Nigerians and women, and it didn't really matter. It was an eclectic mix, but it was all about meritocracy. Oh. And it was, if you were good enough, you got into the mix. And we weren't trying to sort of prescribe what the mix looked like at a board level, which I absolutely purposefully hate when people think, we need to be diverse.
That's right. Diverse managers. Boxes to tick versus putting the right capable people around.
If you're good enough, you're good enough. If you're young, if it doesn't matter how old you are.
That's right.
So it populated an amazing board, and all but a franchise of people who were just collectively trying to do the same thing. And some days we had to have our individual hats on for brands, and some days it was about the totality of the S3 empire.
So you mentioned that, of course, you wanted to be a professional tennis player. You weren't the most academically gifted, perhaps, Gary. So just, again, help me understand how you went from that position to being...
Thank you for bringing me back to
someone who set up, a technology recruitment business. How did that come about?
Well, nobody looks to get into recruitment. It's a very random gig. I try and make the long story very short?
Sure.
I got into technology, so I was a computer operator. Every 3 months, so within my first day, I met the boss of bosses and said, "Congratulations in hiring me. What do I need to do to get my first promotion?" And he said, "You cheeky bastard, here's a list." I went out to speak. You're not allowed to laugh. I went out to meet my shift leader and said, "I've just spoken to Dave, who said I need to do this stuff to get my first promotion." And he went mental at me. But every 3 months, I either got a promotion or a pay rise because I tried really hard. I worked 3 Christmas days on the trot.
Wow.
If I could do more shifts and overtime, I would. I was money hungry. I was ambitious. And I think that comes from mum and dad. So my sister and I there are 10 years between Carol and I. Mum had a miscarriage in between. So with, and we're going back a few. I'm 60 this year, so let's go back a few years, right? So, so medicine and advice and what you could or couldn't do was not what it is today. That's been the case. I grew up with two mums, so my relationship with my sister is kind of is fractious because I grew up with two mums.
Yes. Okay.
So, but when we had that gig, I had to go to work and just try really hard. So mum and dad used to have to go to work. Mum used to go to work, then come back, and then dad used to go to work and come back, and looking after me. And then Carol was looking after me as well, as a baby. But so we worked. We lived and grew up in what was a very hard working environment.
And is that where you think you got your work ethic from? Just observing 100%. Your parents?
100%.
And appreciating that the harder you work, the better your odds
monkey
get.
see, monkey do. So it's there was nothing that mum and dad wouldn't do to look after
provide.
And provide.
Yeah.
And my mum was called Duchess long before all of this royal connection happened, because my father came from was one of seven.
Wow.
Because that was
the done thing back then.
Kind of the done thing, and he got turned over by a family member. He was promised part of a business, and he worked every day, and it didn't work, and then basically had to just reinvent himself. And mum was working incredibly hard, so I just we saw this. Carol and I saw this, of people working really, really hard, and I think it's kind of missed in today's world, that people think some of this stuff just comes to you, or there's a reason. I put my daughter through and gave her the opportunity that she flourished in, of going through a boarding school to meet friends, but her real friends and the ones that she's going to be friends with for life came out of the university, and we thought it was going to be boarding school. Because you're going to be there with this, an affluent community of people, and she works so hard. And today, I'm incredibly proud of her work ethic, and I do think that comes from my mum and dad, Luann's mum and dad, and how hard they work and what they've done and how they put their effort into stuff. But if people think life is gifted to them, well, it'll be gifted for 10 minutes and then you'll lose it all.
Yeah.
So hard work beats everything. If you're talented at something and you work hard, shitting.
That's right, that's magic.
That's the magic. But overall, I prefer someone who's got chips on both shoulders.
Yeah.
I've got something to prove to my mates. I've got something to prove to people at school, and I work hard. We call them PhDs, poor, hungry and driven. And if I could hire a poor, hungry and driven little bugger, I just know that he or she will properly put a shift in. I can teach them everything else. The one thing I can't do is teach them that.
And on that, because it's an interesting point you make, because as you say, those who are successful create their own luck, and they are consistent in working hard to create an overnight success, albeit over many, many years. So question, how have you gone about making sure your daughter doesn't take things for granted? Because, boarding school is a very fortunate establishment to be educated. University,
she wouldn't
likewise.
She hated it. Yeah.
The question, how do you keep your daughter humble, given she's, of course, been perhaps given the start in life that you weren't because your parents couldn't afford it?
I wish you'd meet Lula.
I'd love to meet her.
Because she would literally punch me in the face for you saying that. She thinks my daughter is incredibly articulate. She's got a brilliant brain on her. She's got as big as her brain is, her heart is equally so. And I put all of that credit down to her mum. Right. So she's got an amazing mum who does this, and she's got a really great stepmom in Julianne. So she's when my current wife, awkward, foreign, When my current wife goes up north, she stays with Luann and Tallulah. So it's almost like having two families in one, right?
Yes.
We've been together as a collective unit for a long period of time. So there's no fights or animosity there.
Right.
But her mum's done all the really, really hard work.
What do you think the one thing is that she gets from you, her dad? Because, you've been very
I'm
humble there and saying she gets everything from your ex-wife.
Well, I'm never happy, and I just call her out all the time, say, well, she goes, I've just swapped a car for this car, and it's brilliant. I went, could have got a nicer one. Right, I push her all the time.
That's you spurring her on, right?
I am daddy, never happy. It's like, then what? And what are you doing? But she's basically working on minimum wage for a job that she absolutely loves, for a company that she's in love with.
Yes.
The company, which is half of the battle. Yep. But they managed to go skiing in Norway. Why would you go skiing in Norway? Because they could get an Airbnb and they can afford it. And then she was mum to her little sister, who's got 10 years on her as well. Yep. But she would take that responsibility. And then she came back and they'd just gone to Venice, and then she's come back and said, will you come out for my 60th? So she's coming to Ibiza for my 60th. And she's paying for it all herself.
Awesome.
On minimum wage. Now, that's a smart, savvy kid, which, because I will spend money like it's going out of fashion, but her mum is really smart. So I just push her to say, bigger, better, ball. Bigger, better, more.
Yes.
And she's also fearless. So if she were to say, Dad, can I have some ketchup? I went, yeah, there's a lady over there, go and ask her. When she was like 3.
Yeah, she'd just go do it. Yep.
Because then you don't know there's fear.
That's right.
And you don't ever do it. It's almost like tying up shoelaces for a kid. Once you told them how to do it once, they work it out.
Yeah, well, I think you've kindly explained some of the great traits that your daughter possesses as a consequence of how you have brought her up, Gary. So thanks for those insights. But to go back to sort of, I guess, your early career, so working in IT, every quarter, pay rise or promotion, pay rise or promotion. So what came next?
2.5 years, that.
2.5 years?
Yeah.
So elevated and obviously a big pay packet at the end.
If you were to go back, you're way too young. But the back pages of the Evening Standard were my go-to. So it was the Uxbridge Road, opposite the pub where the Southall riots all kicked off, ironically. And the back pages, I used to sit there and look, and it was recruitment, sales jobs, and I think the sales jobs were on a Thursday. And it was sales manager, recruitment, and I think it was Effectia Gravis. Oh my God, that's gone so many years ago. And I managed to get an interview for a sales manager's job.
In IT recruitment?
In IT recruitment. And it was 50K OTE. I'm going, well, I'm not earning that. I mean, I started, my base salary when I started was 7,777
so this was a big old pay rise, right?
But I earned 19 grand in that year. From a 7 grand basic to earning 19 grand, which gives you a clue about how hard I worked.
Absolutely.
I took on every shift. I did everything. It was all about making money and learning. And I was rubbish at the job, by the way. I mean, absolutely, horrifically rubbish at the job. But everyone knew me in the business because I made friends with everyone.
Yes.
And it was sales. Well, and I'd worked in a jewellery shop. I used to work for, randomly, I worked for Gerald Ratner, who's now a friend, at Collingwood's. So that was my Saturday job, which was working for my cousin. So I thought sales, tech, technology. Well, I'm a computer operator, which back in the day, if you know what that, you get a tape, if you imagine Joe 90, where the tape's going up and down, and you put a ring in or take it out. That's how clever I was. And I was working mad shifts doing that. So I know technology, I know sales, recruitment, management sounds a bit more up my strasser. I'm going to have a go at that. And I had this interview and I turned up in Bowie trousers, one of those shirts that was like a Comme des Garçons shirt that covered hair. Hair was just I looked stupid. And he went, "You've never worked in a sales job before, have you?" I went, "Well, I worked in jewelry, mate." He went, "No, you're an idiot. You shouldn't be in this interview. How on earth have you got this interview for a sales management job?" And I went, "Charm?" Anyway, he just said, "I'm going to give you 20 minutes of my time, so you'll never ever not get a job ever again." Yep. And he just spent time and love to teach me how to get a job in recruitment. Ironically, Mark Heath, who I'm probably my oldest friend in the world, oldest living friend in the world, because a few of them have died. But Mark Heath, God bless him, and I'm godfather to his son, TJ. He got that job. And
Did he really?
We worked. We understood it later in life that we were on the same path.
Wow.
He said during that period of time that I went to get jobs, and Mark ended up being my boss later in life. He said it was more like he was like the sweeper. Huh? It was like Trigger. And always spent his time was sweeping up the mess behind me because I could close deals for love them. Because I got sacked from my first job in recruitment, but thereafter, working with, because I was so shit at it, I could get everyone to say yes because I wouldn't let them get off the phone. But you have to, capitulation is not closing a deal. No. And it took me a long time to understand that, a really long time to understand that. Because I could get everyone to say yes. But did they really mean it? So it took me a couple of years to kind of figure that out properly about what a real yes is. And it's different between a yeah or a no, okay, or a yes, I'm in. Right? There's a massive difference between those things. So Mark helped me to fathom that out. So when I went to S3, Mark was one of the first hires who came to help me just to manage that piece. But it was quite funny when he always talked about how we worked as a unit, and he just basically came in every morning going, "Oh God, what are we going to deal with today?" But that's the joy of selling. And if you want to be different, if you want to create something different, why would you say the same things that everyone's always said before? And I just think, why don't we be creatively different?
And you mentioned there that one of the things that early on you found you could do highly successfully is to get people to say yes. And of course, in business, many people probably try and fail. What's the one thing that you were able to inject into those conversations to instill a positive outcome when others were trying and failing miserably, Gary? What's the magic? What's the one ingredient that you had then that perhaps others around you didn't?
Do you generally think there's one thing?
Probably not, but it would be good to know the thing that you think is the most important, accepting, as you say, Gary, there's many things that will go into that.
I think, so empathy is massively important, but it's totally underrated. If you were to walk into a room, can I just throw this back at you?
Do it.
Should we play a game?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay, if you walk into a room and there are people who are disengaged in the room or they're only talking to their own circle, what would you do? And it's like a party that's important to everyone, and you want them mingling.
Yeah, I'd probably go over and introduce myself if I didn't know them, or try and engage them in conversation.
Or drag one of them over to meet somebody who you think they would be good fun and they would like each other.
Yeah, connect to the people.
Okay.
Right.
Or you might be at and we have this at RDLC. Sometimes all the suppliers end up talking to the suppliers.
Yes, because they feel most comfortable there, presumably.
As opposed to me going, okay, I'm not having this. So I'll grab three of them by the hands. I was like, now talk to these people. He does this, you need this, and I know this needs to happen. Yeah. That's empathic. And I think that, and then you will eventually have a better time, a better quality of moment, and get more reward from it. They will hate me for it.
Yes, at that moment, but on reflection,
Oh,
grateful.
Exactly
Got
that.
it. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so
That makes sense.
So I always think if I'm having a conversation, I understand why you're going to say no. And I love playing games where it was great. I was speaking to one of the guys I sat on their board with today, and I've been pushing him to do role play Wednesdays. So they all get in early, and whoever gets in late or looks the worst has to do the pitch.
Oh, gosh.
And oh gosh, right?
Wow.
That's your first reaction,
That's
isn't
right.
it? Yes.
Very daunting,
Jesus
isn't it, for
Christ.
this young recruitment consultant who does not want the limelight. Yeah.
Or if they know it's Role Play Wednesday, the people who start getting in really early, I think them do it.
Yeah.
Because I can see through you. And then you make people play the role plays. There's no wrong, there's just trying.
Yeah.
And you just try it, and it doesn't. What's the worst? I always think of it as in terms of outbound marketing as well in recruitment or outbound selling. If a client isn't working with you and they hate the marketing you put in front of them, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They carry on not working with you. I can't see a loss there.
Yeah, that's right.
But you've actually practiced the skill to get better at it. So for me, it's all about empathy and just trying. But if you, well, I can't not talk to you without laughing, right? Because I just think life is funny. And if I can just say something that makes you giggle, you know I've got you.
Yeah.
Right?
And have you always been?
You're an inch away from my boat.
And obviously, you are someone, as you say, Gary, who likes to have fun, who likes to approach things in a really informal, sort of jovial way, because life's too short. But let me ask, have you always been that way?
Yeah.
So if I'd have met you when you were just a teenager, you were very similar, flamboyant, engaging, jovial, confident, extroverted.
I was a very pretty young boy, so I got a lot of attention. So I guess life was all right. It's unfortunate for people like yourself. But if you've got, I think personal confidence is I think that people are born with exactly the same amount of confidence.
Interesting.
And they're built with the same amount of bravery. Yeah. They're built with the same amount of fear. Because these are influences that you might have somebody or something in your surroundings that has an impact on that. But ultimately, just remember who you were when you were born. So we're all born happy and laughing. So the first thing you probably do as a baby is cry. The second thing you do is probably laugh, and then you work on your first words. It's just that's sales, right? So just having the ability to just, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? They say no. And then just laugh.
So why do you think, though, Gary, most people spend most of their life fearing no, and that's enough for them not to try? Why do you think that is? Because no one would choose that, because, of course, choosing that only equals a dull, less achieved existence. So why do people choose that if you're saying it's optional?
Well, you dick. Right, so what's a brilliant question, by the way? And nobody has ever asked me that. No is no. That was okay. Right. So I can't even hear the word no. I'm assuming you're saying no because I've not said the right words. Let me say that again to you, because you don't want to say no. If you're trying to interview somebody, do you want them to be right? Do you want to? I'm going to go into this interview. I've got an hour to spend with you. Why do you spend an hour with someone? I just have no idea anymore. I do 10-minute interviews and meetings, but okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes with you. I want you to be right, don't I? Oh. Because that means I tick a box, I've got a hire, and it's going right.
That's right. Good use of time.
I've not said that. I don't ever hear the word no.
But why is that?
But I think it's either, when they say no, I hear not now. If they say not now, I hear, what can I do to help you do this quicker? And if they say, yes, let's do that, I went, okay, well, let's cut out some of these processes and just, do you really need to interview? Right, so my action is just next. I never hear a no. And I don't think people should hear a no. Nobody wants to say no to you. Everyone wants a yes. You've just not pitched it right. So pitch it again. And then they say no, didn't know that. Go again. And go again. And how many times can you go again? It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. Eventually, people just capitulate and go, oh, probably fair enough. But you've just not said the right thing about the thing, or you've just not... you don't need to capitulate on price, because that's never the way to go. You talk about the products, and we do. You never sell the bed, you sell the sleep.
Yeah, the benefit of, not the product, absolutely.
I just don't understand people who keep, I don't understand those.
But can I ask you, because of course your very optimistic, incredibly positive outlook is infectious, but can I ask, for any viewer who just isn't as optimistic, does just feel that some hurdles in front of them are just too high, and they just can't see things as positively as you, what can they do?
Sell ice cream.
Other than selling ice cream, what can they do, Gary, to perhaps, positively change the way they view the same circumstances as you do, but without them seeing a no, because you don't see no. So how can they stop seeing no?
I think there's a really interesting dynamic in terms of the world of staffing and recruitment. You get founders, so really creative, innovative, brilliant thinkers say, I want to do this in business. And then they get the C-suite. Yeah. And the C-suite are the people that they trust to make their dreams come true. And then the C-suite get people who are heads of, so heads of legal, head of practice, head of technology, head of sales. And then the heads of get hiring managers who are going to own their different pods to do their own thing. Then they get HR, then they get talent acquisition, and then they get recruiters. As you go further down the food chain, the passion and belief in the original dream gets diminished. And people then are measured on fractional numbers, numeracy, and shit. If you can get your idea here of why you're special, why you're different, why you're clever, and you get to get in the ear of the founder or the C-suite, they would buy you all day long. I don't try to sell up that line. I navigate out of that line. It's the reason why I think we at S3 were amazing. We didn't do interviews on contracts. It's kind of, do you know about that?
No, I didn't until you just said it. You didn't interview contract recruiters?
No. We didn't have any of our contract candidates interview.
Wow. Because
we used to have the ear of the people over here. And that's what made us special. So we got first-time contractors, because that was cash money. So if you're on 30 grand a year, you get £30 an hour, which was triple your income. So why wouldn't you do anything I told you to do? And then we did first-time trial starts, and we just only pitched right there. And we wouldn't speak to anybody else in the process.
Wow.
And that's what made S3 special. And that's why we got, 100% growth. So when I joined S3, it was, I do love them all. It was 6 years in doing poxy 3 million quid in perm.
So £3 million of turnover, perm fees. How many employees did S3 have when you joined?
I was employee number 18.
So 17 staff.
So I wasn't an entrepreneur as such, I was an intrapreneur.
Yes, but you joined S3 to set up the contract business within what was a 3 mil turnover perm only tech.
Okay, well, I had gone to work on myself, by the way. Yep. I put a lot of investment into me to be the guy who could change the world. Sure. That I thought. And in my first 6 years, we got to 256 million.
So just to play back what I think you said. So when you joined S3, 3 million turnover, and within 6 years, the business was turning over.
Their first 6 years got 3 million. My 6 years got to
250 million.
Plus.
And presumably before you'd created that material growth, you got yourself into equity, right?
Oh, it was 6 months. They gave me shares, yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, but the one thing that they did do, and we did, so they only employed, when we floated, went to an IPO, the only people who had ever done anything like they had ever done before were a couple of people out of accounts and a couple of lawyers.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever done. So when I joined them, they made me get back. I was 20. At 23, I was managing 30 people, wow, and the top biller for what was Dark Resourcing Group, Mike Dauncey. And that was hard work. I mean, literally, they used to get pictures of like a Super Supreme with a stick man underneath it, because that's what my face looked like. It was just ridiculous. I looked so shit. And I was just 7 days a week, and I was doing 10-hour days, non-stop, traveling. I mean, absolutely battered myself to be that person. And then thereafter, I went and learned how to become. So I worked for a big corporate. I worked for a search business, so that when I had an opportunity to go jazz hands, I've got this. And as Russell Clement says, he plucked me from the gutter and said, "Okay, do you want to run a contract business?" It's just squealing with excitement. I go, "I got this. I got 2 people. They got to come with me." And us 4 absolutely just crushed it. When I joined, they put me upstairs with the accounts team because they were so scared of what I would do to the perm team downstairs. They just didn't want me anywhere near them.
Do you think at the time that was a fair call on their part?
Yeah, probably, because I got I begged, pleaded, and bribed one of the admin ladies to give me the keys to the perm office. And I went in every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning.
What did you do?
I nicked all their perm jobs, closed the door, put the alarm on, and flipped away in the contracts. But if I could, the gig was, the quicker I could get to 50 contractors, and I did it in about 3 and a bit months on my own.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. And you mentioned, of course, S3 scaled significantly in 6 years under your stewardship.
That wasn't it. It was a long time after that I got the lead role, but
And
the revenues were all coming out of one place. Yeah.
Contract, the part of the business you set up and ran. Tell me, how long was it from when you joined S3 to when S3 listed?
Oh, great question. So I can't even remember the dates. 2004, 3, 4, 5. It was in that manner.
And what was the market cap when the business listed? Do you recall?
650.
650 million.
We were aiming at a billion, and bar cap came in and we hedged a long time before that, so they gave us 50 for 20.
Okay.
And we all bought houses, boats, cars, planes, trains, shit.
So obviously, as you say, there was a de-risking and then there was an IPO. So in totality, how much value did you take out of the S3 business?
Where was it? I was on a golf course once. It's a really random story. We are such great friends at that eclectic
Yeah, of
group.
course. When you've built something ground up, you absolutely have to be, because the blood, the sweat, the tears, the stories, the late nights.
I didn't have
galvanizing.
I didn't have terms of my shares.
Okay.
Because I didn't need them.
Because you trusted the people that you were in business with.
So I was playing golf at Stoke Park, and Bill's phoned me, and I said, "You're really interrupting an important game of golf, and I'm playing out of my skin here, Bill." He goes, "Well, if you don't get here, you're just about to lose 20 million, so you got to get here pretty quick." Right, so run off the course, and I've just literally carred it down to London. Yeah. And they've forgotten to actually put my name on the share list, and I had to sign some docs. Now, they could have been dicks at that point.
Yeah, big time.
But that was the relationship that we had, I love their family, and I spend
course.
Christmas Day with them, and
awesome.
we do Cannes, and we holiday together, and it's just like it's a different gig.
Yeah.
It's a different gig to how most business relationships work.
Totally.
And when we fell out, and it was, what are you doing for lunch? I went, what's funny? Monaco. Right, it was just bonkers the way that we all behaved around each other. It was just so much fun and so beautiful.
So just to check in, so with the de-risking and the IPO, you took about £30 million from the business.
So if we did, in totality of my career at S3, is about 30 million.
Wow, incredible. And obviously now looking back at that, given you're no longer involved in S3.
We're not going to talk about footballers and think they were shortchanged.
No, definitely not. But what I'd love to ask you, as someone who, as you say, had humbled beginnings, Gary, and worked so hard in your first job when you were paid, minimum wage, £8,000 per annum. When you look back now and reflect on the fact that you set up a contract business within S3 and built it with a phenomenal team supporting, and you took £30 million of equity off the table, how does that make you feel?
I don't want to sound like a dick.
No. How do you feel?
We launched over 100 different brands. Yeah. So the people that worked with us, who are still today some of my best friends in the world. Oh, I'm going to get emotional, right? But they are some of my favorite people on the planet who have and are running great businesses. But there were people who have sold and done stuff. So you got people like Sean Wadsworth. You got fucking believable success. He earns so much more than me, and good on him. And I love him to bits.
And of course, Sean Wadsworth as not only highly successful but incredibly relevant regionally. Bearing in mind Frank International, the business he founded is based in the northeast, and of course that business is significant, and he's created loads of value for himself.
Unbelievable, right? So you got all these people who've done brilliant things thereafter. The money comes if you're doing it well. Yeah. Oh, and to be fair, I'm a dick with money, so I literally it's like I've had a good time. But the most important thing is some of the people that we've helped along the way and the things that they've done and what they've done to the sector. I think we changed the sector, and I think I had a massive part to play in that.
That's incredible.
And the way that we've taught people how to bring selling into recruitment. And what's most important right here, right now, if you think about 2022, get a CV, you get 3 first interviews, that's logistics, is admin.
That's right, that's process.
Okay, 2024, 25, good luck on you. Oh. Okay, how do you get someone to break a supply chain? How do you get someone to want to work with you? Talent acquisition is the worst thing that ever happens to the staffing sector, but actually probably to UK PLC because it slowed it down. It's absolute bollocks because they don't understand, and all they're trying to do is tick boxes. Where we as recruiters would say, he's wrong on so many accounts, but you're going to love him and you're going to hire him. But he won't make it in front of the hiring manager because he doesn't tick all the boxes. It's like, what are you paying us for? We get paid a lot of money, for what we do. And that stuff just gets lost in the ether these days, I feel.
It's really inspiring that you talk about your journey with S3 in such an inspired way. And by that I mean, when I asked you, when you look back on having created £30 million of value to you, what does it mean? It was genuinely really inspiring is the right word, to hear about you only talk about the people that you had the pleasure of sharing the journey with, who've gone on to create great businesses for themselves. I mean, that tells me a lot about you. So when did you come to leave S3 and why? What was the reason for one's departure from this phenomenal business that you'd built?
Oh, you dick.
And I do know the answer to the question, but our viewers may not, Gary, so feel free to share.
Well, so I got the tin sack, yeah. So It's a really interesting story. When you lose someone, as the people who were like Bill, who was so influential but never turned up, rocked up and did the old young Mr. Grace from Are You Being Served, who all done very well. But he was kind of giftedly genius. As he said, the best thing he ever did was learn how to hire brilliantly and get out of the fucking way, right? But that was golden. And then the team, so Russell and Sunil are super smart. But also when you're trying to develop your own personal brand as running a business, I likened them to, with all the love in the world, I likened them to Hinge and Bracket. So because they were finding their feet. So I launched brands. I had a paragraph of the business. I bought a website called stratrg.com. So I created a business around it, and it was my presentation to the board was the shortest business plan in the world. I want to do this, and I got it through because it was Bill went, go on in, it's a good one. That's all I had to do. No numbers, no data, no anything, and we were a PLC by that time. It became slightly more stringent, and I became totally disengaged. And also, I went madly off the rails. I lost mum and dad in succession. And I was for someone who was madly anti-drugs in the business. If you did drugs in the business, I'll sack you on the spot. Yep. So I went off my tits with all of that.
Because you'd lost your parents, so you effectively went off the rails.
I'm not giving myself any excuses, by the way.
No, but is that what happened? Because that would have been a tough time.
I'm not going to give myself that excuse. I'm not going to opt out. I'm not going to give a soft landing. I was a dick. Oh. It was, it was really hard. I got done by the fake shake. And although that whole episode was him coming into my house randomly, and then some girl saying that they lost their glasses. My girlfriend at the time saying, well, we'll try and find them. And then she put cocaine in front of me and asked me to chop it for them and give it back to them because they didn't know how to chop coke. It's right. So this is, I was hardly an innocent during those periods of time, but that was an absolute 100% sting. And I'm glad he did time. So fuck the fake shake. And he's never come back to the public eye. So he's done. But during that period of time, my friends rallied the wagons, and then we circled everything, and everyone was looking after me. Awesome. And we did more business. I made more money, and we had more friends out of that because they thought it was very unfair.
You mentioned, sorry to interrupt you, Gary. You mentioned that obviously when you were building S3, you were working 24/7, 7 days a week, because building a phenomenal business requires a lot, right? And presumably, as a consequence, you had to sacrifice a lot, i.e. spending time with friends, family, etc. I mean, just how hard did it hit when you lost your parents? And were there any regrets about having not spent more time with your family? Because it's the one thing that I think anyone who's successful in business probably at some point reflects on. Did we put our time into the wrong thing?
Have you still got your parents?
Yeah, I do. And like you, my parents are the two most important people in my life outside of my wife and daughter. So losing them, I can't even comprehend.
Okay. I still wake up and think, got to call mum.
Yeah. And then it dawns on you. Yeah.
Right. And that stuff, that I don't think that ever goes away.
No.
And it was quite funny. My sister and I had this fractious. So we had this moment. I said, "You do realise you had mum and dad for 10 years more than I did?" She went, "I never thought of it that way." I said, "Well, maybe you should. Yeah. Because I don't think that's fair." Yeah. So all of these things they do play a part and become part of you. Yeah. So when people, I'm not very forgiving about people turning up late for work. or people not doing what they say they're going to do, or people not doing their non-negotiables.
Yep.
And part of that is because if you say you're going to do it, you just do it. And I think that was very much brought into me from mum and dad. And when I think about parenting and how I would never ever fail in a promise to mum and dad. Never fail in a promise. My mum used to give me absolute grief about the fact that I didn't know how to use the washing machine and I didn't know how to iron, and my room was always a mess. And she goes, how are you going to live? How are you going to live without us? And I went, I promise you, I absolutely promise you, I'll always be rich enough to not need to worry about it. Now that's horrific, isn't it? That's a horrific answer. However, I've done right so far, and I'm 60 next month.
And can you use a washing machine?
I have done. I'm very, very, very bad at emptying it. But I can chuck shit in, put the ball in, do it, and when Julianne says you haven't taken anything out, because she won't capitulate to me, I just chuck it in the ball and put it on the other cycle. It should be all right. Eventually, it will happen. The munchkins will come in and do it, and I'm just assuming it will happen. Yeah, it's really bad, but that's my bad stuff. But the good stuff is that we have better choices in life. We work hard. I work hard to get better choices.
Totally.
It's Butlins or Bahamas. That's why we go to work, and that's why we have this. It's a very low barrier of entry into recruitment. But it's a very high barrier if you want to be good at it.
Yeah. So obviously, since you exited S3, you spent most of your professional career helping others set up, scale up, and exit businesses in the sector. And of course, not only through the Pirates, but through other consultancy gigs. Fundamentally, you must now have worked with, advised, sat on the board of hundreds of recruitment businesses. Is that about fair? It's got to be hundreds.
It's 30 a year times 10 years, yeah.
There you are. God, so 300 staffing businesses you will have advised or sat on the board of. And of course, all of those will be benefiting from your significant experience, your wisdom, your hindsight, your ability to only see yes, and I can keep going. So I'd love to ask one question. And this is not only you reflecting on all of the businesses you have and continue to advise, Gary, but it's also for the benefit of the viewers who perhaps you haven't advised or haven't worked with to this point. What's the one thing that a founder of a recruitment business must have to be successful? Again, there will be many ingredients, but what's the one thing that time and time again successful people have that unsuccessful people don't seem to have?
Can I give you three?
You can. 3 is good.
Because one's really, really, really hard. I love people who can listen and learn, and listen to learn.
Yes, right.
As opposed to go, yeah, but. So my absolutely antichrist is people go, yeah, but.
Because what you mean by that is those people aren't really listening, they are hearing you, but they just want to give you their response, their answer, rather than absorbing
and to know but that wraps around a whole load of things. It's about ego.
Yeah, I agree.
I know they love being the boss. Yep. They don't want to hear that's something that this is happening really well for somebody else. Yeah, but why haven't you thought about it? Yeah, but, and it just, and I just don't think you're willing to listen to learn, and that will slow you down in so many different ways. Yeah. And that's, I think, is the big reason why people then don't become part of a network or willing to hear what your peers are doing. And it's a little bit like, as salespeople, I love competition. I want to be on top of that leaderboard. But if someone's doing better than me, I want to fucking I just want to, how are you doing that? I don't want to rip your arms off, but tell me how you're doing it. Oh, do you want an ice cream? Right, so I want to learn how to do that. And I think the best people have that. I also think people get into recruitment leadership way too early.
Right.
And I love recruitment. I love recruitment people. I love everything about them. It's, you know what, Gigi Hart's recruitment to its absolute core. I think it's one of the greatest things in the world. There's anybody can do it. It's a proper meritocracy. What a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous environment it is. But if you do it too soon, you just think, well, I've just made 10 grand there and I'm only going to get £1 grand out of that. So, well, what's your cost per desk? What sort of tools? What sort of tax you've at? Chasing money. And then suddenly you go from not managing people. So now you go from the recruitment journey, decent salesperson, and if you're not a decent salesperson, you'll never get into leadership. Oh. Decent salesperson, then you get to become a trainee manager because you start your own company. So why didn't you learn it on his salary rather than your own, yes. Idiot? And then you become a proper manager. Wow. So now you're actually trying to run a business. So you got all of the issues that are associated with that. You're not even a CEO yet, by the way. And then you become a managing director, and now you're managing money, and then you become an accountant. And the quicker you can become an accountant, the better recruitment manager you'll be. Oh. And the better your agency will be, the better your business will be. So I try to teach people from day one, okay, I'm going to talk to you like an accountant, you're going to hate me. So what's the ROI on that? What's your return? What are your caveats with all of these legal terms? Right, all of that stuff. And they go, you got what? It's like, so why did you learn this on your own wage?
Absolutely.
You absolute buffoon. So do a shift. Learn the trade and do not start a recruitment business up until you've managed 10 people on somebody else's shift and learn how to do it properly. Shating, then you'll be successful, right? And the third thing is you've got to be someone that people will follow. Right. So ultimately, you've got to say your dream 1,000 times a day, 1,000 days a year. So we say, you're so lucky to be here. You're so lucky to be here. Because all they're trying to do is hang on to your shirt tails and think, Jesus Christ, Gary's amazing. If I can hang on to him for as long as I can possibly hang on to him, and I'm going to go so fast, if you drop off, well, there'll be another one. So you keep up with me. I'm not, did you ever watch, you're so much younger than me. Back in my day, there was only 3 channels on TV during the summer, and one of them was Snow White Horses, and you go, Snow White Horses, right, really random, right?
Yeah, sadly, yeah, that's pre me, Gary, I'm afraid.
Okay, or the other one was Champion the Wonder Horse. Champion the Wonder Horse. His dog was Rebel, random. Right, so this horse, this stallion was running through these canyons. Pounding behind him, the whole of the flock's going with him, and they're all just absolutely energy behind him. He's going, yeah, whatever horses do, right? And they're absolutely pounding. And I just thought the best business leader is the one that sits on that Champion the Wonder Horse and goes, go left, go right here, go left, go right here. That's what we need to do, but all of the power and the energy is coming from the business. If you're that poor bugger who's walking, dragging Champion behind you, and all of the other horses behind you, and that's all you've got, please go and just be a lollipop man. Right?
So by that you mean a leader should lead from behind, not dragging from the front.
Okay, so you sell the dream, the mission, the energy, and they just believe in everything you say and say, right, go faster. Oh. So Wayne Brophy taught me being consistently consistent. I was consistently a bit of a dick. So if you did 9,600 quid this month, it's the best month you've ever had, what would I say?
Well, 10,000 the following, presumably.
No, I'm just saying you're 400 quid away from a well done. That's gutted. Idiot. If I walk away and go,
there's something I've got to ask you, because it's been consistent throughout the conversation so far. You're obviously incredibly self-aware. You're obviously a very emotionally intelligent guy. And you've just said yourself that you were consistently a dick. Oh. Why have you knowingly, consistently allowed yourself to be a dick? Because you knew you were doing it. Why?
Because it was funny.
And this goes back to you always wanting to smile and be jovial.
I'm just authentic. It's like I did 9 million last year. Oh, so close.
Look what you could have had.
Exactly that. And I'm going, oh, fuck's sakes. But they knew it was coming. Everyone always knew it was coming. Right. So I was speaking with my mate James, who I was sitting on his board, and he said, we've just had the Hindu festival, so we're slightly down this week, but next week we're gonna do 70K. And I went, so close. And he just phoned me back and said, "You're such a dick." Right, but
and are you cool with the concept?
Oh, because they're laughing
of being considered a DICK? Are you cool with that?
But why not? Because it's why would you have an advisor who always says, "Well done"?
Yeah, smiles and nods. Oh.
I'm not their dad. Mm. You know, I'd like to think that I'm their friend. Yeah. But even when we had, you know, walking through the office, when I got sacked at S3, I started doing chairman hours. Yep. So 10 to 4. Yep. And eventually that was the time I got in. Right. So, and that's where all the drama hit. But I used to walk through the office and go, "Time you call SG." Right. And literally, so I had 200 people were giving me banter. And if I didn't have it back, so if I can't give it away, if I can't give it back. So yes, yeah. I used to read joke books. I used to have a joke every time I used to walk into the office. I had something to give them back, and I'd just sit with people. It might have taken me 2 hours to get to my office, because I'd sit with people, and I'd just say, "What happened to this yesterday?" And they go, "How do you know that?" I went, "Because that's what I did all day. I just looked at everyone's data." Because if they knew it mattered to me, it mattered to them.
Yes.
If it didn't matter to me, and I was just looking at the boards, people think S3 is a monolithic big business. I had 60 P&Ls, and I knew everyone inside out, and I knew everyone in that team. I knew all their top performers. And I knew everything about it. And I spent my time trying to sack people, because the way that everyone got rewarded was the more people they had in their teams, the more money they earned. Mm. So I tried to sack people, and they were going, do. So that's kind of anti-business, but that was the way that we work. So I just went, gotta go.
So obviously,
which is very random, but so much fun.
Well, and we're back to this subject of fun. So obviously, you know, now through RDLC, you know, you advise many businesses, and you've gave us some real good insights into the things that successful businesses and business owners seem to have and convey versus those that perhaps struggle. So just to go back a little, obviously earlier on you mentioned that you know, you've had more than one wife. And for sure, that sounded exhausting, Gary, just hearing it.
I just love buying houses and a bit of cake.
Well, clearly so. Clearly so. Just tell me, when you look back at sort of, I guess, the relationships you had with your previous wives, anything that you now do differently with your current partner that you do differently as a consequence of perhaps things you've done before that you wish you hadn't?
Three of my wives are absolute beauties and brilliant and clever and smart and friends.
Yeah, which is great.
One's a dick. who was a money-grabbing little bitch. But apart from her, everybody else was absolutely on point and brilliant. Would I have done things differently? I don't like thinking going backwards. No regrets. Tallulah's mum is one of my best friends on the planet. My first wife, I was only just talking to her brother last week, and she's amazing, lives in Australia, having a great life, always cares for me, and was offered huge amounts of money to sell stories or dig up dirt on me. And my current wife, as I like to call her, keep her on her toes, is absolutely mint. So in the grand scheme of things, we've done all right. But I don't want to say anything against any of them, and they've all been a massive part and impact in my life, and they're all very positive.
Totally.
So they've all added to this rich tapestry of this nut job that is Gary, who, you know, I don't want to conform. I don't want to be what everyone thinks. I kind of like being a bit punk, and you know, the world's just full of dry, crusty, grey. But the people who do things differently, I kind of really aspire to.
Well, they bring the colour, right? They bring the dynamism. They bring the excitement, and those are things everyone would want.
And it's just, but I think sometimes when people think about if you were to it's a great question, right? I'm going to ask you a question.
Shoot.
When constructing a board and a board of advisors to take a business to an exit, dry, crusty is kind of fit for purpose for that because people
you want people who've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, and therefore these people will be experienced, if that's what you mean by sort of dry and crusty. But not every experienced person has to be stereotypical of this sort of, you know, old, dry, stale.
And I just think so in a world where the world is changing so fast right now. Yeah. It's why I don't think everyone should desperately try to conform, and I think trying not to conform is the new black. It could be that you get a board full of, you know, maybe that there are some influencers who can have an impact, or I do like that. I absolutely hate it when I see people touting themselves as advisors, consultants, and, you know, geniuses, and they've never done nothing.
Well, you've got to be able to practice before you preach, right? And a lot of people do preach as advisors, but they've never actually done it themselves, is the point you're making. I think that's totally fair.
We might say about Man United and the management team at the moment. But it's like,
as a Sunderland fan, I'm not going to respond, Gary, but I appreciate the point you're making.
But it's
just to ask, if I may, sorry to interrupt you, but just to ask, so obviously anyone watching this podcast who would just Google Gary Goldsmith, they will see what they will see, because we live in a world whereby, sadly, people have opinions, right or wrong, based on fact or fiction. And of course, you've talked about, you know, your previous wives, most of whom you have a really great relationship, which is fantastic to hear. Obviously, there's been one set of circumstances which perhaps was completely blown out of proportion, which definitely, to most people, would have only left them in a dark hole, feeling pretty down and depressed. Just talk to me about that, because again, you wouldn't think that you've had to endure that level of negativity, given just how incredibly optimistic and positive you are in outlook.
But strong. We're at a charity event for Russell for last night, a DJ. Ended up getting a taxi home, which was the journey lasted 4 minutes. My wife wasn't incredibly happy that I said we should go home because we were both a bit battered and just thought we should get home really.
She wanted to still party, presumably.
Yeah. And I just said that I just don't think this is going well. Yeah. So let's just exit. And I also think I've got this whole thing about nothing ever good happens after midnight. Yeah, okay. But these days it's about 10 o'clock. And within 10 minutes.
The older you get, the earlier you must leave, right?
Shit, yes. And a taxi driver got in the middle of me and her having a row, and then sold a story to the Sun. And I said it didn't happen. My wife said it didn't happen. He said it did, and the judge just, chose sides. So with all that in mind, I know if you think about it, I'm a wife-beating, drug-dealing pimp. Apparently, if you listen to all of that stuff. But everyone, I've got more friends, more followers, and more people involved in the IDLC than I've ever had. And we never lost anyone because they all kind of know me and know that's never the case. So if it's one of those, I live my life these days and think once, think twice, think Daily Mail. So that's how you have to live your life. And with all of that in regard, it wasn't my choice. No. So it just so happens that my amazingly brilliant, beautiful, more beautiful on the inside than the outside, amazing Catherine is going to be the next queen. I didn't choose it, and it just happened upon me. And then suddenly you've got a spotlight on you. So everything that you do, anything that you say, it just gets thrown out there. So not wishing to take away from that whole episode, it's horrific. And when that stuff happens, it is.
And even though obviously
it's really hard.
Well, and even though you and your partner knew that you didn't physically attack her, obviously the layman reading the Daily Mail sees something different. I mean, genuinely, how did that sort of make you feel, and how did you deal with that? Because I can only imagine it must have been pretty horrific knowing that the world is reading this. And a lot of people who don't know you like I do, perhaps might have thought that did happen. Yeah. So how did you feel about that? And how did you sort of recalibrate your own self at that time?
Yeah, I was a front news story of CNN.
Oh, God.
It was global. So we all think it's just it's here.
No.
It was everywhere.
No.
You bury yourself for 12 hours.
Oh.
And then you bounce out of bed and go on then. What else you got?
And it only took you 12 hours to reach that place.
Yeah.
Wow.
Probably less, in truth, because my phone melts when shit happens. Oh. So everyone's just going, "You're right, G. You're right, G."
Yeah, well, you find out who your friends are, right, when that happens.
Oh, but I'm blessed with a cacophony of friends and options, so I can always run away if I needed to. But to be fair, that wasn't. It was nothing. Does that sound really flippant? I don't want it to sound flippant.
No, it doesn't. The substance of it was nothing because you nothing had happened.
Right. It was. I don't want it to sound flippant, but it was nothing. But being 12 pages in the News of the World, when that was the first thing that first ever happened when got pictured with a secret spy camera of someone cutting cocaine. The worst thing about that was actually the shorts and the pants is a rubbish picture. I'm a prettier boy than that. So that was horrific. And I had a very young daughter at the time. And I just didn't know. At that time, I genuinely didn't know what that actually meant and what was going to go on. It was like, bang. And then the first phone call I got is my sister saying that her and Kate are just really sorry and you're right, everything okay, love you, bye. So once that had happened, I just thought, do you know what? I'm better and bigger than this. Nothing happens. So when that event happened with Julianne and all that transpired from it, I don't want to say water off the duck's back because I don't want to sound like I'm that dismissive of it, but it was so far removed from the truth.
Yes.
And then it still went to court, and I still got accused, and still got a criminal record against it. I mean, you just got to is what it is, but it is what it is. And the people who know me know better of me than that. So I didn't lose a friend over it.
Oh. No, well, I think...
or a gig, by the way, which is interesting.
No, it is. And, your positivity is inspiring because a lot of people would have found it difficult to bounce back at all, let alone within less than 12 hours.
If someone told me Tallulah was poorly today, we'd be in a different place because that's really important.
Yeah, that matters.
And that's real.
Yeah, right.
That the stuff that's, it's, chip paper doesn't matter.
So can I take from that what you're saying effectively is you're relaxed about people's perception of you because the people that you care about know you? Is that what you're saying? Almost the perception of the world doesn't matter as long as the reality you're at peace with. Is that what you're effectively saying?
I'm at peace with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means that I will pick fights on LinkedIn. I don't care. I genuinely, what are you going to do? What's worse than being on CNN? It's the front story.
Right. The worst thing that could happen has happened.
It's happened.
Yeah.
So what can you do?
Yeah.
So I think I can be true to myself. And that gives me an element of freedom and joy that give a fuck. I just, can you care? And I think people who are just, it's quite interesting. I'm trying to get more people to do more things on video and just say something. And there's something that's blocking them. They think, what happens if someone thinks this?
When they're thinking about people's perception of what they are going to say. A lot of people have that filter, right?
And the nice thing about this, and if I could say anything to anybody who's running a business, having an opinion is more attractive than being bland or blancmange, right? Just have an opinion, because a lot of people go, I get you, I like that. And if they don't like it, you can do. My biggest customers, that I made more money out of people who complained to us than we did out of businesses who liked us randomly, because it's how you approach that. So if someone says something that they don't like, and you just go at them and just say, why, how, what can I do? And they appreciate the fact that you're showing willing and being open-minded. But if you didn't have that opinion in the first place, they wouldn't know who you are. Yeah. And mostly they don't know who you are today. So be known for something.
Obviously, I mentioned earlier that you are clearly, Gary, a very experienced, very emotionally intelligent guy. You are very aware. And despite that, you do, obviously in a very sort of extrovert, very confident way, say things that, as you know already, get a reaction because you're not blancmange. And I know you do that intentionally because, you're a very astute man. Do you do things to shock people because actually sometimes people need a shock because the rest of the world is sanguine? Is that why you do it? Are you trying to shake people and get them to listen because perhaps if you don't shock them, they won't? Is that what you're doing? Because it's an interesting approach and style that you have.
I do make myself laugh.
Yeah.
So I put that out and go, oh. When we launched the IDLC and we decided that we put the brand around me rather than the brand around the brand, which was Dean's idea as well. We just thought that. So
this is Dean Kelly, your business partner?
Yeah, my business partner. Yeah. So we'll just put the brand around you because more people know you. And we'd had many a chat about this, but every time I have an opinion or call someone out, we generally add about 5 to 10 new members.
Interesting.
So it kind of, I generally think having an opinion matters, as opposed to just not. And if people say, so a lot of people think that the IDLC is just like a party club, and because we do the Ibiza thing, and because we do the awards thing. The Ibiza thing is so genius, by the way. We're sat there on a beach, everybody talking business for 3 or 4 days. And networking and coming up with ideas, and people got iPads out and they're planning. It's like, but they might be drinking some rosé and having some sushi whilst they're getting sunburnt, right? That's why we changed its name to the retreat. Right. It's a treat for you, but it's it's time to suck it up before we go into Q4 every year. But people just think it's lads, drink. And it's as far removed from that as you could possibly have. It just so happens that we all like each other. That's right. Because we spend more time with each other than some of the other networking groups where they sit there and it's a little bit more stiff collar. And we just want people to, because if you're friends, you can work together, and you could potentially, find ways to. So we've got maybe 6 or 7 groups of pirates who are investing in different things and doing things collaboratively and working where we're not seeing that anywhere else.
Well, people want to work with people they like. People want to see their friends succeed, is your point, right? Which is why perhaps Retreat really works, because it encourages collaboration.
But to answer your question, I can't really turn myself down. It's like I'm either on or off. There's no dimmer switch. I remember Bill came in once and said, literally, you're growing so fast, we can't afford you. Can you slow it down? Right? It's like contracts is a dimmer switch. What are you on about? Go get some more money. And he ran away for 2 weeks and came back and goes, carry on. And he'd put he and Simon's house up.
Wow.
As
to fund the working cap of this contract business that you were scaling beyond magnitude.
Yeah, it just goes, wow. I can't believe it.
Shows you a lot about their trust in you.
Oh, it was unbelievable, yeah. But I can't believe he came in and said, can you slow it down? It's like...
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it don't quite work like
That's
that.
That's right. Fred not. Fred not. We're rolling down a hill and we can't slow down, I'm afraid.
It was absolutely not.
So obviously you touched upon earlier the fact that you are uncle to Kate Middleton. And of course, with that must come a degree of sort of responsibility. How has Kate and her mother, and of course the royal family, sort of responded to some of the things that have been quite publicly aired in relation to your past? I mean, how have they responded to that?
So I'm godfather to James, who's the younger sibling to Kate and Pip. I invested in his business. I was in my local pub, just having a chat with Nigel Farage randomly, as you do.
Are you friends with Nigel Farage? Or was that just...
No, he is. He drinks and to be fair, I've got a lot of time for it. So it's and I don't think I've got a racist, ageist bone in my body. So, but I just think he speaks really kind of.
He's quite candid, isn't he? And he's non-PC, which is perhaps politically refreshing.
I think the guy's really, really smart. Although he did put the phone down to me that it was the day that Donald Trump just won the last election, and his nephew is working for the guys who run my local pub. And we were there doing selfies, and he's picked up the phone, and I've ended up speaking to Nigel saying, where's Trumpy? Because he's right next to me. I went, can I have a word? He went, well, am I not good enough? So he's very funny. But you've got Pip's husband was drinking in the pub, and I just sent her a little message to say, I think your beau's there, he's off his tits. And then she came around, you snitch. So I get on brilliantly with the kids, and I didn't get warned off of doing Big Brother. There's none of that stuff. I think everyone knows I don't think I've said a bad word about the family. I think what they're actually doing is the most refreshing part of it.
I agree.
I do like the fact that the royal family is, broaden its, its appeal by having who I think is the I'm going to use the word saviour, but I think Catherine is unbelievably important for the royal family and all that she's gone through, and Charles is who's doing a brilliant job. So I'm a massive royalist because thanks to mum and dad and the days back in Windsor watching the polo. So I'm big time into all of that. I think I'm not sure they'd be proud of me, but I don't think they hate me. And this whole tag of black sheep.
And obviously, the royal family, as you say, is a global institution, highly respected, loved by the world. And you know that even though perhaps each member of the royal family will have their own personalities, their own interests, they'll have their own extracurricular sports and hobbies. Your sort of outspoken, your very flamboyant outlook is different because they are conforming. Have you ever thought about, and I think the answer will be no, but have you ever thought about conforming as well? Because of course, you and the royal family, presentationally, seem different.
Well, we shop in the same places.
Yeah.
So we both love Gives and Hawks tables. Yeah. We get our hats at Lock and Go. Do you know what? I like me.
Yeah. Slightly on the same question, Gary. So again, I'll perhaps refer to Kate specifically.
Do you like me?
I think you are a refreshingly honest, down-to-earth, phenomenally successful guy. So yes, I do like you. And I think more people should be willing to speak more freely. But of course, the royal family, I would perhaps suggest, do not speak as freely as you. So question, why don't you think the royal family starts being a bit more accessible, a bit more honest about things? Because they are quite politically correct.
Well, no. Fiscally, it's done me quite well. There's no saying that Harry wouldn't make my pub quiz team, so that did quite well for me a couple of years. And I'm not a big fan of his current wife. But did I throw that in there?
You did. You did.
Yeah. So I just don't. Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan.
Why is that?
Because I think, why would you break up a family? Or why would you come in with such, it's almost like you've come in with such a set of opinions that you're creating this discord that was never there. And I just don't get it. So that's, I think it's just very, very random. And I want to be anonymous. I'm the spare. I don't want to be in the public eye. And then, as long as Netflix gives me 100 mil, I'll be all over it.
So do you think that's part of something bigger?
So all of that shit is just absolutely just bonkers. I do think they're speaking more freely. I do think they're trying to bring it into a more modern age, and I do think, again, I kind of love Charles. Right, he's quirky, he's different, and it's a different dynamic. But after Elizabeth, who was amazing, and kind of held us all together through some very dark times. If you think about that lifetime's wars and
incredible
everything that she's been through, I think Charles is doing a really decent job, and he's trying to put a shift in.
I agree.
I don't think the world would be upset if he would say next gen, because I think what William and Kate will do will be spectacular. Yeah. And we're all excited to see that. So I think the popularity of the royals is only going to increase over the next kind of generation, so the next 10, 20 years. So that's very, very exciting. Also makes me blood numb, by the way. Yeah. But it's, although I did have a very funny conversation with Mike Tyndall, and I said that I think I'm closer to the throne than you. He said, what are you on about? He punched me. He said, what are you on about? I said, well, I've seen the list. It goes, everyone on the balcony, me, the Chuckle Brothers. So,
mischievous, Gary.
Yeah,
and speaking of being mischievous,
he's very funny. But I'm a massive on this. So
yeah, no, and that comes across loud and clear, and likewise. So obviously, you know, as a consequence of the responsibility that you have, as a consequence of being related to the royal family, and given what we've discussed around perhaps wanting to continue to work with owners of businesses as they develop their businesses. And given, we all know that perception can sometimes wrongly be reality. What sort of was the inspiration to go on to Celebrity Big Brother last year? Where did that inspiration come from, Gary? Because I wasn't expecting that.
You and me both. What on earth was one thinking?
Yeah, genuinely, where did that come from? Why Big Brother?
Because I wanted to do The Jungle, was the truth.
And why did you want to appear on any of these sort of reality TV programs?
So here's the gig. I started doing my podcast, of which I've done 50 odd. Oh. And it was a passion project. Oh. And I just wanted to have some fun, and it was an opportunity to, but like this, right? You meet some interesting people, we talk about some shit,
and it's just quality time with like-minded folk.
Yeah, right. It was just brilliant fun, and all I ever did was through those 50, they were all friends of mine, and they had to be tight mates, so I knew a little bit about their backstories and the history, right. As opposed to there's quite a lot of podcasts that out there. There were just people interviewing randoms about random stuff. It's like, yawn off.
So you can't get into the same level of detail if you don't have a relationship.
Yeah, if you don't know the history. Yeah. And by the way, you're a great host. It was when I was interviewed for it, I had a plan. So when quite a lot of people, when they set up a podcast, somebody comes out and says, what do you want to achieve? And then they come up with the format. I knew the format. It was going to be TGI Friday meets me and my mates, and we're just going to basically have a row and get pissed. That was the gig. Hard to do 4 in a day. I'll be honest with you. It was pretty fucking hard to do 4 in a day. We were always hammered. The last one, you can tell. And he said, "What do you want from this?" And I went, "I want to get on. I'm a Celebrity." And within 3 episodes, I got the phone call to say, "Do you want to come do?"
So they approached you.
Yeah.
So the producer of Big Brother called you and said, "Gary, we want you on Celebrity Big Brother."
If I'm brutally honest with you, they came to me from Big Brother. They came to me a couple of years previously, and we were very close, VV close, but we didn't quite get it over the line. And this year, they just threw money at me.
And when you say threw money at you, how much did you get paid to go into the Big Brother house? And I'm looking for a number.
So 100 grand up front and 100 grand, but on from extras, yeah.
Awesome. So £200,000. And were you?
Did you just ask that?
I did, and you answered it.
Half a watch.
There you are. So obviously, Big Brother in front of the nation.
Dick, by the way. Absolutely.
In front of the nation, and of course, you were the first housemate to be evicted. Was that the plan?
No, although it made my hourly rate go up through the roof. Because it's the same money, regardless. It was quite. When you come out, you go through this whole process, and they show you all the headlines and things that have been said about you, and you spend about 2 or 3 hours just talking about. So an opportunity to decompress and find out what's being...
reintegrate you into real life, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sat there with Julianne and my daughter, and we're going through all of the headline papers, and they're giving everything, all the stories that have been said and all of the stuff. And it was the biggest viewing figures they've ever had ever.
Wow.
in that first week that I was there, and then they dropped off a cliff.
Is that right?
And it was really interesting that they were saying it was, people were so interested about what was going to happen. But the minute I was in there, if you can remember it, and
I can.
40 minutes in, I've got a target on my back, and they put me up for eviction.
That's right. Yeah, your housemates put you up for eviction straight away.
And then they said that you shouldn't belong here. Now, I had some really interesting rows in there, and some great bits. So once they desperately wanted me in. So I always know the production company desperately wanted me to survive that first one. I had a row with Louis because he was saying, "You don't really belong here, do you?" I went, "Look, I'm more interested in the business of dough, not the business of show." And then he said, "But do you feel like you fit in?" I went, "Look, in my world, I'm top of Mount Everest, right? I'm top of the pyramids. I'm a gangster. Yep. You're still sitting at the kiddie table and only eating stuff that Simon Cowell throws you over his shoulder. So where are you?" Didn't make it to the edit. Right, and there's stuff like that could have been good value.
And what do you think Louis was getting at when he was saying, "Gary, you don't belong"? What did he actually mean by that?
Because everyone's got jazz hands, and to be fair, if I'd got this hair and I'd lost 5 stone, I'd probably still be there today.
You'd have overstayed your welcome in the Big Brother house.
Yeah,
You'd have moved in, Gary.
And I kept falling out with people saying, "If you're going to sing one more fucking song," so I got yellow carded a couple of times because they didn't. Sales banter is not like showbiz banter. Apparently.
And did you have any tactics going into the Big Brother house? Because of course, as we've acknowledged, Gary, you are an outspoken, non-politically correct person. You will say what you think. And of course, sometimes the recipient doesn't appreciate that. Did you have a strategy going in, or were you just very comfortable being yourself? And if the housemates didn't like it,
I felt it was very nervy going in, I'll be honest with you, because I know they were trying to get me out of the way, so I stood in front of the camera, didn't I, on the way in. But because Papa didn't know where his cues were. But once you're in, I think you've got to be yourself. The problem was 40 minutes in, you're up for eviction. It's like, you what? And it was like, it totally stole the wind from my sails. Yeah. And then random things, like I fall out of bed and they said, "You did that deliberately." It's like, you what? Who would do that? And why am I sharing a bed with somebody from Coronation Street?
Who was the one person that when you went in the Big Brother house, you quickly felt like there was commonality with and you could get on with?
Well, Fern Bretton and Fern is very open and willing to talk to you. And God, I forgot his name, Reggae Sauce.
Or Levi Roots.
What?
Levi Roots.
Levi. All right. So Levi is an absolute dude because he invited me to his birthday party as well. So he was brilliant. So he was doing yoga at 5 a.m, and I was just rolling around like some sort of beached whale. So Levi was absolutely golden.
And other than Louis, who of course you've just perhaps mentioned, you didn't see eye to eye with, who was the housemate who you least got on with?
Look, Sharon's a dick.
Sharon Osbourne.
Yeah, and absolutely, literally, a total wrong. And I didn't like the pair of them because they were slagging off the pop industry and people in the pop industry who'd made them all their money. Oh. So what? Why would you do that? Yeah. Just suck it up.
That's right.
But why would you do that? Yeah, they were just. I just didn't get them as humans. Humans. Yeah. They are not.
So obviously,
they are not good people. But let me just, I'll sit on the fence on that one. Wrong-uns.
So obviously, you reflect on Big Brother, and £200,000 better off.
I'm having a drink now.
Do so.
Shalom.
Shalom to you. So £200,000 in, Gary. You were there for, as you say, a week, if that. And of course, you were showed the door. Is there anything that you genuinely, putting the money to one side, is there anything positive you've taken from that experience?
100%. We did well, I don't even know what to call it. It was like that retreat and that sort of namaste kind of moment where we're all just talking about stuff. And Fern asked me a question. And when she said, "Are you happy?" It's like, wow. And I just burst into tears and could not stop crying.
Why was that? What put the emotion out?
I think it was all to do with, are you genuinely happy? Could you be happier? And because I think I tick a lot of boxes, and I'm emotionally buzzed most. I choose my mood every morning. Do you choose your mood?
I do, absolutely.
Okay, so before I put my feet on the ground, and I'm probably desperate for a piss by that point, but before I put my feet on the ground, I choose how happy I'm going to be today, and it's generally a strong 10. I was just, I wish I'd spent more time living and growing up with my daughter. There's things like that, just really random stuff. I wish I'd been better at tennis because that's what I wanted to do in my life. Randomly, it's like people say you've had a decent career. It's like, yeah, but I didn't win Wimbledon, did I?
Yeah, well, that's right. But it comes back to the question of sacrifice, doesn't it? Because to achieve anything, you have to perhaps sacrifice other things. And of course, often it's time with those that matter the most. So I can appreciate why that would make you feel sad, because on reflection, the only thing that matters, in fact, is your family.
I think it was you're so under the spotlight in that, and it's very intense. It's intense. So anything and everything can make you feel quite emotional when you're in those spots.
Yes.
But I also like the fact that I'm at that moment in life where I'm just going to say no to nothing. Yeah. Just go on then. Yeah. What you got to lose?
Yes. Yes.
So it was, a lot of people watched it, and all my friends watched it and said they were glad I was out because they could stop watching it. So that was quite
That's right. Yeah, you saved a lot of people a lot of evenings, didn't you, Gary, by being evicted first.
And Dan Barbie, who was the production guy assigned to me, is an absolute gem of a human. We still speak together. So he's just now in prep for what is now. I'm not even relevant. The next one starts next week.
That's right.
I'm not even relevant. Who am I? Nothing.
Well, the challenge is nowadays everything's capable of being brought back to the fore, right? Be it Google, be it... It's now on 5, isn't it? It's a 5+1 archive. Yeah. But the great thing is, as you say, you only know what you know as a consequence of having done it, and no regrets, which I totally respect. With one eye on time, I've only got one final question, Gary, if I may, before we bring this podcast to a close.
All right.
Obviously, you've had a phenomenally successful career.
Very generous.
You've had a incredibly colourful life. And as you say, you now have a beautiful partner and incredible children who make you proud. When all is said and done, what is the one thing you want people to remember about you?
I've got a sick backhand. I've got one-handed backhand in tennis that is different gravy. I always talk about leaving a footprint.
Oh.
And if the one thing that I would like most for people to say about me, I was the face that launched 100 careers. That'd be amazing. So from people who came into my stable, from the likes of Lawrence Doe and Martin King and Lloyd Moore, and all of these amazing people who've gone on to do some really brilliant things, that I touched them in such I touched them in such can't say that anymore, me too. I touched them in such a way that they went on to do something, and they might think kindly or fondly of me, that I, in some way, shape or form, I help them. That's all I want.
Thanks, Gary. It's been brilliant.
Oh yeah,
having you on my podcast today. Massive thanks for sparing the time, and I'm sure our viewers will take so much away.
I'm not sure.
Thanks,
luck to
Gary.
you. Namaste.
It's been an absolute pleasure having Gary Goldsmith on my Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcast today. Without doubt, it has been one of the most colourful, most flamboyant, most unpredictable podcasts. Of course, Gary, without doubt, can only be described as a highly successful, highly motivated, highly achieved businessman, having built and indeed listed his first recruitment business many years ago, taking £30 million of value off the table. Gary definitely is someone who is no nonsense. He's not politically correct and does not apologise for that. For me, one of the key takeaways has to be Gary's absolute work ethic. He's willing to be the hardest working man in the room, accepting that the harder you work, the more lucky you become. Gary definitely likes to inject humour, and he doesn't seem to take himself too seriously, albeit the reality is someone as successful as Gary has to be someone who is incredibly focused. But that doesn't mean that one can't have fun along the way, right? Gary definitely is someone who has inspired many people, whether it be through his time at S3 or, of course, as a board advisor, mentor and coach. And without doubt, I think the legacy that Gary referred to, i.e., he would like to be known as someone who has inspired people to build successful careers and in turn create significant value for themselves, for sure tells us all a lot about the thing that motivates Gary the most, which is to see others succeed. Of course, Gary's had some ups, which I've described, and downs. And I think that clearly, as someone who is profiled, there can always be mud thrown. And perception and reality are different things. I think Gary's unwillingness to be distracted by people's perception is admirable, because it is difficult, isn't it, to perhaps brush off people's perceptions, especially when they are being shared with us so visibly on the front of a newspaper. Gary's desire to continue to try new things certainly went to lofty heights last year when he appeared on Celebrity Big Brother 24. And despite being the first person evicted from the house, for all of the reasons that, again, the nation could see for themselves, I think it's great to see that Gary doesn't regret not only appearing on Big Brother, but actually anything he's done. He's better for having tried, he's learning as he goes, and in Gary's absolute own words, never say no, only say yes, and on reflection decide whether to do it twice. You have been watching Confessions of an Entrepreneur, powered by RG. My name is Carl Swansbury, and it's been brilliant to have you join us today. If you would like to download this podcast or any other podcast in my Confessions of a series, then please do so from wherever you download your podcasts. But for now, thank you for joining us, and I really look forward to seeing you on future Confessions of an Entrepreneur podcasts.